Hello and welcome to this essential B2B webinar brought to you today by Lead Forensics. I'm your host, Brand Awareness Manager Joe Ducaro. The theme of today's webinar is set up a Q4 pipeline to close the year like a boss. If your sales pipeline is currently leakier than a broken sieve, you're not alone. No organization is immune to pipeline challenges or missed quotas. If you're looking to reevaluate your sales approach just in time for Q4 to finish the year strong, we've got your back. We've assembled a panel of industry thought leaders to share their tips for effective sales pipeline management, maximizing opportunities and closing the winnable deals. So joining me to discuss sales pipelines and more is a panel of excellent guests. We have Michael Manzi, 10 times head of sale with over 80,000 followers on TikTok, where he's helping companies under $10 million build and scale outbound, advising CEOs or training teams. Hi, Michael. Great to have you with us today.
Glad to be here.
We have Charlotte Loyal, Strategic Sales Director, podcaster for Investment Monitor. Hi, Charlotte.
Hi, great to be here.
We have Tyler Witt, returning guest of the webinar, sales evangelist and charming human for Lead Forensics. That's what's on your LinkedIn, so I just went with that, Tyler. Hello, Tyler.
Hello, thank you for having me again.
We have Killian O'Grady, Head of Sales and Senior Sales Director at Sprout Social. Hi, Killian. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Joe. Delighted to be here.
And finally, last but absolutely by no means least, we have David Bentham, Director Sales Development at Cognizant. Hello, David. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm not too bad. Thanks. Really good to be here, as is everybody else, apparently.
Excellent. I do have to apologise. I do have a slight sniff. Also, my voice is slightly nasally for this webinar, but we're going to carry on all the same. We do have a chat function that you can get involved with throughout the webinar. So if anyone in the audience feels like they would like to ask a question, please feel free to pop it in, although we have quite a stacked card here, so there may not be time. If there is time, we'll get to your questions. So guys, first question I have for you today is, what's the best piece of sales strategy advice you'd give? Something that you've put into practice and has made an impactful change to your results. And I think, Killian, we'll start with you.
Yeah, lovely. I think one of the key things, even though Q4 is obviously very important, it's very unlikely that things are going to fundamentally change from any other quarter. So I think from a sales rep's point of view, it's really important to know your numbers, to know your conversion rate, your average deal size, and know your sales cycle in particular. I think that's something that people get caught out on. And I think just to make sure that, there's a fair amount of science to selling. And I think the more you know, there's a lot of predictability there. You know the pipeline coverage you need, and I think if you keep all those things in mind, Q4 shouldn't. There's obviously maybe an extra push and energy from the sales team, hopefully, but other than that, fundamentally, customers don't change a huge amount in that short space of time. So keep focused on the science behind the numbers.
Knowledge is power, I suppose. Thanks, Killian. Charlotte, we'll come to you on that one. Best piece of sales strategy advice you'd give?
Oh, I've got several. So first off, make sure that you're focusing on RGAs, revenue generating activities. So everything has to be client facing or calling prospects. Make sure that you're managing your time well. Do you need to have internal meetings? Could those meetings be an email? Time block to prospect. Can't stress the importance of this. You're going to spend 1 hour cold calling, time block for the week. So focus on that for 1 hour. Then you might want to focus on cold email. When you're researching a prospect, make sure that you block it off in your calendar. Don't leave any white space, otherwise you're going to end up forgetting to do it. Another thing I'd say that works really well for me is multi-channel prospecting, or multi-channel prospecting if you're American. So don't just rely on sending emails to prospects, cold call, use video, use LinkedIn. Start sending LinkedIn messages, LinkedIn voice notes. They're under 30 seconds. They're great. Not many of my prospects use them. This is still really underutilized on LinkedIn. When you're commenting on your prospect's post on social media, leave a thoughtful comment. Don't just say, well done, congratulations, looks good. Say something a bit different. Read what what are they posting about? What's their company been posting about? Show that you've done your research and that you're using all these different channels. So LinkedIn, send a video. Sending a video is really easy. I think a lot of salespeople get into this whole mindset of, oh, it's going to take me too long to put together a 30-second video. Time block 30 minutes. I can send up to 20 videos, I can record up to 20 videos in that time and then get them sent out. So show your prospect that you're doing all these different things, and try, the more you touch them on different channels, the more likely you're going to get a response. Another thing that I'll add is disqualify to qualify. So I find in Q4, well, not just Q4, but previous quarters, a lot of salespeople have deals in the pipeline that are just not going to come through because they haven't disqualified properly. So if you sense that your prospect's not interested, call it out. Get on the call, tell them if you're finishing a demo or if you're coming to the end of that proposal call and you sense that, ask them what the hesitations or pushback would be. If you sense that they're not going to move forward, say it. You want to get an answer. You want to get a no faster so that your pipeline is going to be more, you're going to see more conversions from your pipeline the quicker you disqualify to qualify.
What a comprehensive answer to that question. That was fantastic, Charlotte. So as you were talking about RGAs and then you start going into video, there was a big show of appreciation from Michael Manzi down there. So Michael, what have you got to add on that?
Yeah, I can't agree more with two things in particular. One is using the LinkedIn voice notes. You see it, you have to click on it, right? Like you're just wondering what this person said. So if you want to increase your open rates, so many people that I talk to are like, Mike, I have great open rates, 10%. I'm like, that's really garbage. My clients are doing 30, 40, 50% open rates on their emails, but on LinkedIn voice note, you're going to look at like 90, 100% of that. The second thing is with videos, I totally agree that it's underutilized. The only videos we ever see are the sales reps from Vidyard going, and those ones are crap, by the way. Those ones are crap. Videos that you should be sending, first of all, your name should be, I'm really big on specific tips, but your name should be at the end of the video, not in the beginning. Nobody's interested in, hi, I'm Mike, I'm calling from delete, right? So the email the video should be, hey, I know that you're Tom over there and you're the CRO. That typically means you're super pissed because your reps aren't doing enough prospecting. You're super frustrated because your CEO isn't giving you enough budget, and you want to make sure that you have reps that never leave. Now, I can't help with the first two, but I can help with that last thing. And I'm Mike, and here's how I do it, right? But having that like real life conversation that's kind of slightly funny, but very real, lets them know that you understand their business, not just I understand their business as it relates to my business, gets them to be like, okay, cool, I want to talk to you. And you leave your name for the end because there really should be, just like on TikTok, a hook, action, or engagement stuff, and then a call to action. So cannot agree more with that at all. And what I would say, though, similar to what you were saying, where you have to disqualify people, here's what I think is a couple ways to expand on that. What you need to do is not only disqualify, which I completely agree with, and I'm sure you'd agree with this, but project manage. As sales reps, especially earlier in the year, we're like, my job is to get you convinced and then hands off the wheel. What it really is, my job is to get the first person convinced, and then my job changes. Now I'm a project manager from my point of contact through the rest. So my framework for that is you start by saying, what are the next 1 to 2 steps you have to take internally? Not what are the next steps, because then they just give you a bunch of BS. What are the next 1 or 2 steps you have to take internally to get something like this approved, like not pushing my product? Then no matter what they say, I'm going to go, okay, cool. If this doesn't work out, you don't buy me, you don't buy anybody else. What are the likely reasons? And it might even provide some reasons. It might say, listen, like your boss is the one who bought the previous tool. So is there any chance your boss says, I don't want to buy this new tool because I'm going to look dumb? But I'll say that if this doesn't work out, what are the reasons versus asking, any way this doesn't work out, or do you think we're good? Commit. If it doesn't work out, what are the likely reasons? And then I think the real killer that's been really helpful, especially in Q4 or just towards the end of quarters, is if that happens, your boss says no, budget, whatever you guys say are potential roadblocks. What are you going to do? Too often we say, hey, are we going to be good? And they go, yeah, we'll be good. Budget might be an issue. And we go, okay, cool. I'm going to make an ROI calculator. I'm going to send you an email with like 87, 89 links that you're never going to read. Forward that along, and here's an 85-page deck. When we really should be saying, what are you going to do? And if they have a good answer, wonderful. And if they don't, and they say, guess what they're going to do? They're going to be like, do you have anything? And now instead of you sending an 85 link email You're sending them something they're asking for specifically, and you know it's specific to a problem they have, and now you're controlling the deal way, way, way better. So those are like my first two things. I'm happy to answer any questions about that, but I can't let my time be gone without saying this last bit, which is anytime you need somebody to move, you get your significant other to go to dinner at the place you want to go to dinner, or someone to sign before the quarter ends. There are only two things you can do. You can either reduce friction or increase the incentive. So Amazon makes the buy now button that reduces friction to buy. Other things you can do to reduce friction are things like, hey, can your boss come on the call? No. Shoot, can I get in touch? No. Well, the reason you can't buy is because your boss hasn't seen the demo, let's say. Let me make a video of the demo. Let me, I have a friend that can make an intro. Can my boss reach out to your boss and show them? What are ways I can push you along and help you reduce friction to whatever that next thing is, or increase incentive? And of course, we know incentives are things like discounts, and we all say we'd never discount and then give 30% off. But the other thing you would do is of course, just say things like, hey, we have this, the better CSM is going to come on board if you guys can do a certain thing, or I can just send you a thank you if you do something like this. But these are all different ways that you can get someone to move. I think the best example I have of this is I had a client once who had, it was like 30 or 40% of their inbounds they actually booked meetings from, which is terrible. So we jumped it up to like 80% just by changing the email from like, can we meet, to option A, you do it yourself, option B, we meet. And just doing that made the email easier to respond to, reducing friction, and then increasing the rate there. So those are my three thoughts.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, I really like the idea of using the video in that sort of creative way. But David, down to you then. The best piece of sales strategy advice that you would give?
Yeah, so I'm actually just going to jump a little bit on Charlotte and Michael's points of, I was going to talk later about LinkedIn voice notes, but we're massive on them. It's been the second biggest channel for Cognizant in terms of outbound bookings for the whole of this year. We've been doing it all year. I would say though, and just because I think differences of opinions are like really interesting, and it can be based on persona. Cold video back in 2018, 2019. Killed it. Like, I could say the same thing, second biggest channel over dialing, but we really find that I think our persona, which is sales, which obviously tends to be little bit more ahead of the curve, has potentially got a little bit more bored of that. We're using video, but pretty much exclusively in follow-ups nowadays. So just to I think a lot of that is going to depend on the audience's persona as to how effective it is, but yeah, like definitely a big advocate of both as part of the outreach process. The best piece of sales strategy I could give right now, I'm obviously very much SDR focused, top of funnel focused. And the biggest thing that we're investing in at the moment is actually the list build, like the accounts that we're going after, the prospects that we're going after, getting that as tight as physically possible, so that we're really focusing on the accounts that can ultimately close, but not only close, but also become like really consistent and good customers for us. So we're recording. For years and years, or forever since the inception, like we've recorded so much data, like we've gone over the top on what we're asking from our SDRs, A's, and account managers to give us that feedback loop, so that we can really have a clear picture on our ICP. Lead Forensics, I promise, have not asked me to say this, but we are, or pay me to say this yet, but please pay me afterwards. We are massive on intent signals. So whether it be something like Lead Forensics, where it's telling people that are on the website, we partner with a company called Bombora, who are absolutely fantastic in terms of giving us their intent. But we're looking at we blended into our account scoring system through our wonderful RevOps team. If we've got triggers that say if someone hires a particular job title within the company, that's going to pull that account well up in our account scoring immediately. So we go really deep in that kind of information. Now, not everybody here is going to have access to that, and especially if you're an individual seller, but you do have access to LinkedIn, where you can search for job titles that that are interesting in terms of, or that are within your ICP, and see if they're actively hiring for them, and then kind of add that to your account list. So for me, it's the list build that's such an important part of the overall strategy at the moment.
And David, just let me know if you'd like your usual payment in gold bullion, and we can, discuss after this.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Tyler, best piece of sales strategy advice you give?
Yeah, I had a couple things written down, and I think so. There's one I think I'll hit on specifically here because Killian hit it dead on when it's no different than any other quarter, right? And so I think a lot of what Charlotte, Michael, David talking about, a lot of so especially Charlotte and David talking about the bucket of your net new, right? So how you're going to go out, you're going to find, you're going to build that pipeline. Michael's talking a little bit about how you deal with your existing, and there's really three buckets, right? Your net new, your existing pipeline. And then the one thing that does change in Q4 a bit is that you do have more older pipeline, right? So if those are your three buckets that you can kind of pull, those are, so you want to, what's your game plan? Know your numbers, figure out how am I going to get to X, right? So here's X, whatever that goal is, figure it out, reverse engineer it, and then break it down in those three buckets, right? What do I need for net new? What are my current opportunities? What do I need to do on those? But then old pipeline. And in Q4, that does become, especially for people in kind of that full sales cycle or closing role, that it's the largest it's been all year. So how you go about that. So for me, I do put extra focus in on that, and I'll put together my list. I start my drip campaigns, and I don't really care if a person told me a month ago or 3 months ago, no, it's not the time, not ready. Good news is things are always changing, right? And especially, for myself, I target sales and marketing, highest turnover of any company. So it's a good chance a person that told me it's not the right time doesn't work there anymore. But I'm getting, I'm going to be fairly, I'm going to say the term like aggressive or assertive in my approaches of reaching out. One of the biggest tips, let's, see how this one lands. I go back, I scrape my entire database. And one of the big things I've always done in Q4 is I know my company's touch policy. And if they're within boundaries, so meaning within territory or product lines, I'm going to pull any pipeline from wherever I can find it. Marketing lists. I'm going to pull other people's sales pipelines if they're not. And if they're not working it, you better believe I'm going to be working it. And because Q4 is the time people are reassessing budgets. They're in the market potentially, right, for what the next year's going to look like. I want to go after that. So I am being paid to say this. I would buy Lead Forensics 100%. I would get that in place, and I would put together. That's my big thing in Q4 is I'm going to scrape because it's my largest bucket of the year of old pipeline, and I want to get in front of as many of those people as possible. And I won't go into the details of the cadence and this and that, but I'd implement all the strategies that are being talked about here because they are brilliant and they're all like perfectly applicable in the market. And just as applicable to your older pipeline as it is to new or current pipeline. And then I would go like ham after that market and try to get back in front of those people because it is going to be my largest untapped kind of lowest hanging fruit in terms of sales for my Q4.
And again, gold bullion coming your way, Tyler, for that as well.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
Killian, I want to come back to you on this one. What are the most important things to consider when managing your sales pipeline efficiently?
Yeah, I think the interesting word in that sentence is efficiently, and I think efficiency means different things in different segments. So I manage different teams, some focusing, say, on very high volume sales and some on much more strategic sales. So I think it's a little bit different in every segment. But obviously, the thing to remember is that you've got to understand the customer buying journey, what they're going to go through and what time is involved in that. Just because we want something to move particularly quickly in Q4 doesn't mean the customer is suddenly going to move faster. So I think knowing your typical sales cycle, maybe it could vary by deal size, it could vary by complexity. But I think one of the things that we've certainly seen is that the buying process has become a lot more complex for a lot of the organizations we're selling to. And I think you've got to reverse engineer it. And that drives a lot of the efficiency in your pipeline management. You've got to know what steps are going to have to happen from your whatever the final step in your sales process is back to wherever you're at, be that right back to prospecting. So I think it's about identifying and bucketing those deals together and knowing that you've got, and a bit to Charlotte's point about blocking out times to do stuff. I think it's always, from an efficiency point of view, to try and do more of the same thing at the same time. As humans, it's difficult for us to switch from one task to another. So if you've got your prospecting time, I can find with various buyer persona, if it's better if you're engaged with the the same ones one after the other, because you get into the mode of the conversation and the language rather than switching, say, from a finance buyer to a technical buyer or whatever it might be. So try and tie them together. Our focus, if you're across multiple industries, try and segment your pipeline in a way that makes sense, so that you've got some commonality in terms of either persona, industry, sales stage, or whatever it is at a given time. But again, it comes, like I said at the very start of it, knowing your numbers and knowing your status. So for each of my teams, it's slightly different. My SMB teams, for example, would have high volume. They know what their win rates are, and I think the thing is to make sure not to waste too much time. Again, to the point of qualifying out or disqualifying prospects, I think that becomes a very important part of it. And I think with the more enterprise and strategic deals, I think the risk always is that you put all your eggs into one basket. Put too much effort into one deal, and it's always about balancing. Have you got what's going to cover it if it goes wrong? Have you got something to cover that? So I think it's very much an individual thing, but I think for every team it's important that everybody's aligned and know that this is how these are the steps they're going to have to go through, and you can't just suddenly short circuit it because it's important to us to close by a particular date.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not even necessarily a sales thing, is it? Compartmentalization and time blocking. It's useful in all aspects of work, I suppose. So, Charlotte, what are the most important things to consider when managing your sales pipeline for efficiency's sake?
So touching on what Michael said before, certainly for Q4 anyways, how do you incentivize your prospect? So you might want to say, look, can we do anything special to make this happen sooner? Can we onboard you in Q4 and then start in Q1? Save that time. So incentivize your prospect, but so that it's a win-win. It's a win for them. Another thing I'll say is, again, going back to activity. So know your metrics. Again, touching on what Killian was saying, but you can control your input. You can't control your output, but you can control your input. So know what you have to do, the activities that you have to do to be able to get those results and triple X your pipeline. One thing that no one's mentioned, ask for referrals. So when you're on calls with your prospects, is there any other department that your solution might tailor to? Really important to ask for referrals. Another thing is your mindset. So a lot of salespeople, I think, can neglect their mindset. So every morning, and this has really helped me, journal. And this is something that takes under 2 minutes. So you write down 2 or 3 micro goals for your day. What are you grateful for? What will you be grateful for? And then go back to it at the end of the day. Is there a tough situation that you're anticipating? Are you anticipating any no's? How are you going to overcome that? Do that first thing. Then when you go into your day, you're ready for this. You're not going to feel that rejection as sharply as you would had you not done that. So that mindset is key, and I think it's one thing that salespeople perhaps don't focus on enough.
Yeah, I suppose it's probably in the culture, the sales culture. It can be quite easy to neglect that, as you say. Yeah, I think that's a fantastic point, and it's something I'm probably going to implement actually going forward. Just to make a little note. Right, this is what I'm grateful for you today.
And one
David,
more thing I want to say is
sorry.
The pain points. So managing it when you're on discovery calls, are you really getting under the skin of this prospect's pain points? Still, salespeople they'll hear one problem and then they'll jump into, oh, this is my solution. This is how we can help you. You need to really get under the skin of the pain points, and these are changing, with each quarter. So the pain point 3 months ago might not be the same pain point in Q4. So are you really uncovering all those pain points? What's the impact if you don't solve this problem? What impact does it have on X, Y, Z? Like really thinking not just about how it impacts the person or the people that you're talking to, but how would that impact other areas of the business? Are you uncovering all of those pain points?
Lean into the sort of the emotive side of it, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
David, down to you. What are the most important things to consider when managing your sales pipeline efficiently?
Yeah, for sure. So again, I come at this from a top of funnel lens. And although I don't manage pipeline directly, I do create it and I'm accountable for the creation of it. But one thing that goes both with our top of funnel individuals as well as our AEs, our closers, and account managers, is just multi-threading. And especially in Q4 when we've got December coming up, people are going on a lot of holidays. You're gonna have a bunch of job switching. Some real life stats out of Cognism is that we've got it's 7 times more likely for us to close a deal if we have 5+ stakeholders involved in the opportunity versus 1. It's pretty unsurprising that if we've only got 1 person, that it falls off pretty quickly. So yeah, I think like multi-threading is super important. Actionable tips: we actually incentivize our SDR team, if you do have SDR teams, to multi-thread. They work on opportunities actively with the AEs to help kind of bring in different like cross-sell regions and different stakeholders where required. But also just on the AE side, if you're sat there with if you're a closer and you're sat there with like 1 or 2 people in your opportunity, start reaching out to the others, because it's going to be incredibly important, especially, as I say, in this holiday season.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, David. Michael, come to you.
Sweet. Agree with everything. Killian, 100%. Reverse engineering everything. I can't agree more. Charlotte, you're totally right. I feel like one of the things that's not talked about enough is how our self-worth is our percent of quota, and I don't think that's talked about enough. But some of the things I'll say, the first thing kind of related to Killian is understanding which deals are coming in and which ones are not. Too often a sales rep is like, yeah, things are going well. I have this deal and that deal and this deal and that deal. Then I sit down and they go, cool, of your 20 deals, which are going to come in? They're like, these 2. I'm like, okay, great. And that leaves how much left? Okay, where are you going to get that from your current deals? And then what percent do you typically close in month? Okay, well, that leaves you like 75 grand short. So just having that direct conversation with your reps, or if you're the rep with yourself, to figure out how much short am I effectively, to just know, to just have your own goalpost. Because I think having a quarterly goalpost might be really challenging, but when you see, okay, I think the goalpost is here and I feel like I'm crushing it, and you recognize you're actually on the 20-yard line, it gives you a different pace that you're going to want to take. But to be more efficient, I think that one of the big things is the next steps bit that I told you about before. The other bit is understanding politics and processes. If who you're selling to, that's also their Q4. That means that the CEO says to everybody, tell me what your budget is for next year and sell more stuff, right? And every department head is like, okay, cool. And they're slapping together all sorts of random stuff and they're taking calls and they're like, yeah, we're going to need all these training things. Now, when they go to bring it up to the CEO, your person's like, CEO's going to love this. CEO's going to need this. We're going to have to get it like it's Cold Stone Creamery, right? And then it's like, well, but actually the CEO was like, I told you guys all to make these budgets so I could slash 1/3 of them off the table immediately. So like having the conversation with your person to say, listen, why don't I give you a higher price because your CEO is going to want to slash it? Or if your CEO told you to slash 30% of your stuff, all the other things you're asking for, would we land in that 30% that's getting slashed or not? To understand where you are and talking about that process can help you guide the person through this process and be more efficient, because you'll be like, this deal is a great deal, but it's not going to come in Q4. My person loves it, but it's not going to come in Q4. Great, move your time. And then, I mean, like on a real transactional side, like for Killian's like SMB team, I know we're doing discounts or we're doing anything else to try to move people quicker. Anything we're doing to move someone quicker, whether it be a discount or a friction reducing thing or otherwise, there's 2 things that I found have worked really well. One is everything having a deadline of the 15th or whatever is effectively the 15th of the month, because everyone hates being pushed on the 30th because it feels like commission breath. On the 15th, if they go over by a week, who really cares? Because you're still kind of getting it in that month or that quarter. And then the other thing that I found is really helpful is actually just having discounts or incentives that decrease over time. So if you're able to say to the sales team, listen, in October, we're doing 15% off if they do X. In November, it's 10. In December, it's 5. They're going to bring it up to their customers, and that gives them and their customers a reason to create some urgency. So when their customer is saying having to go to the CEO to get budget, they might say, hey, can we just actually say yes to this thing really quick in November? I know we're not saying yes to everybody's stuff until our December 20th meeting. Can we say yes to this really quick? It gives you a little bit more of a chance to win. Now, it's very transactional, not for larger deals, but a couple of things that can help you be more efficient.
Thank you very much, Michael. Again, another hugely comprehensive answer there. Thank you so much. Tyler, round us out on this question then.
Yeah, I'm glad that Charlotte brought that up. I think whenever you talk about sales, you have to talk about mindset. So I'm glad you brought that up, right? Like your mindset dictates performance. Your performance should never dictate your mindset. So I do think, I think it's always important whenever you're talking sales, you do bring that up. So I appreciate that. Yeah. I mean, so look, when it comes to organization, number one, if you're organized, you're already ahead of 80% of the salespeople out there. I mean, vast majority of them, they have zero idea where their pipeline is going to come from, where their next call is going to be out to. I think a lot of times we like to live in this world where we believe, yep, sale, because again, you do want, we live in this fictitious world where salespeople are super organized and super blah blah. We've all been salespeople, I believe, on this call. We all know that wasn't the case most of the time, right? And so for me, that organization is always broken down. I always found it the easiest if I just look, here's what my goal is, right? So I want these 3 buckets, right? I've got my net new, got my current, and I've got my lapsed. And then I just focus, just like a business owner would, right? Like here's my revenue channels, my new customers coming in, my existing customers, maybe customers I've lost along the way. How do I do my win backs there? And I focus on each one as a separate channel. So that's how I've always looked to kind of organize, regardless of whether I've done B2B, B2C, B2B2C, right? Whatever it is, transactional, enterprise, like I just kind of always break it down to that. And I look like I need, historically speaking, most of my revenue is going to come from my existing, right? In a B2B cycle, it'd probably be existing because it's the pipeline you're currently working. Your net new, usually pretty hard to turn that around on some of the sales cycles. But if you're transactional, it's going to be flipped, right? Like your net new is going to be the stuff you get on the call and close. But understanding, right there, have that game plan and then organize your day. Here's what I'm going to focus on this bucket. Here's what I'm going to focus on this bucket. Here's what I'm going to focus in on this bucket. And then that's going to be primarily my path every single month, every single quarter. And the better, over time, I'm going to get more data back, which is going to give me, more insight on how I plan that going forward. But that to me is kind of the key to organization. And then the last point, so that's going to be the big one. The other one I was just going to say on this is like, one of the laziest things you'll ever hear from a salesperson is, I can't get this person on the phone. And that to me is like, and I think that's something that, everybody's kind of talking about in here, but I just want to say this out loud, like that is laziness. Like, look, there's so many ways, right? There's so many social media channels like X, Y, and Z. You probably, if you didn't ask them for the cell phone or different, maybe they have a Slack thing that they use. If you're not asking for that stuff, if they're not willing to connect with you on LinkedIn, like you've already got some big red flags on whether or not that should even be in your pipeline. And then, beyond that, like if you're going after older pipeline, like maybe you should be tackling, if I talked to person X and they said, no, this isn't in this year, but it's a good fit, maybe talk to person Y. Right? Don't be afraid, right? If you're gonna make an omelet, you're gonna break some eggs. So if you hit a roadblock here, you just reach out over here. So again, organize down to those 3 buckets and go until you get the result you're looking for. Right? Don't stop simply because it got hard or this person, I think they're out, this week or whatever it is. Like you do not want to be stuck in that gray area of I don't really know where we stand. And then final, and this will be the only time I get a little long-winded like this. I think that Michael said something in there that I just want to hone in on because it's absolutely correct. Are you in the budget? This is big, like especially in Q4, because they are looking at budgets in B2B, this and that, right? B2C is different, like, find a dress that fits them and you're in pretty good shape around the retail holiday season, right? But like in B2B, like you ask them, so you're in budget planning. Am I on that list in your budget? Where am I on that list? Like find that out because they have a presentation they bring back. Here's the stack we're looking at and they have it ranked ordered. So find out, have you prepared the list? Am I even on the list? I've found out so many times like, well, no, but if this gets bumped, we'll put you on there. All right, great. You know what I mean? Yeah. And where am I on that list? And I've been told before, like, well, you're number 4 or 5. Well, number 1 is like Salesforce. It's like, great, okay. Well, what kind of budget are you getting next year? And I'm in big trouble in Zoom or whatever these, crazy, like, okay, like this is going to get out of hand very, very fast here. And so that thing, and I think that was a very important point you bring up. And when the world's tightening down on their budgets, right? Like you have to be having that conversation in the B2B world, and have it now, because if you're having that post, or post November into December into the end of the year, you're in really big trouble.
Thanks very much, Tyler. Again, guys, you've given such brilliant answers to these questions. So just as a quick reminder to everybody watching, this Essential B2B webinar is brought to you by Lead Forensics. So thank you very much. Right. So guys, there's been a lot of actionable tips and a lot of insights that you've all brought to this discussion. So thank you all so much for doing that. I'm going to come around to each of you, and I'd like you all to give one top tip. If there was one thing that everybody watching this webinar would take away, what is your one key lesson you would like them to learn? So Killian, we'll start with you.
Okay, so the one thing I would say is, and this probably is relevant to Q4, but is to create urgency. And I think Michael touched on it a little bit by the 15th of the month type of approach with discounts, etc. But I think urgency and scarcity are two things. If you can create those, can really help you move your pipeline forward. And two great examples I've seen. One is, even though we sell a SaaS solution, it's pretty easy to implement. But no matter when the customer says they want it, you've always got a fake that they should have ordered a couple of weeks ago. That's going to be tough, and I'll pull out all the stops to get it for you. And as we've moved more to a virtual world, one of my AEs, I really like the way, so we offer trials of the product, like you've just offered in your poll. And typically, if you do it online, you'll get a month. One of my AEs has turned these trials into a real opportunity of scarcity. So he looks away from the camera as if he's looking up at a shelf, as if these trials were physical products, and he'd say, I've 1 3-day trial left, I've 2 5-day trials left. Just to create that FOMO that you're going to miss out. And it's really shortened the sales cycle, rather than giving something to somebody for a long time that they don't really need. I mean, people can evaluate software very quickly. So just creating that scarcity is the tip I'd give.
Thank you very much, Killian, and thank you for joining us for this webinar. Scarcity and urgency to take away. Charlotte, your final take home for everybody?
So I'm going to ask you to become content creators and social sellers, and you can start by doing this on LinkedIn. So since May, I started posting 7 to 10 times a week on LinkedIn, talking to sellers mainly, because part of my prospects are not just marketers, but they're also sellers. And it's had an impact. It's a great way to be seen, talk about a niche, be out there, but also generate leads. So, I've been on several calls with prospects who don't even like or comment or engage with my posts, but they mention them to me when I'm on a call with them. So leave an impact, make your sales job easier, start posting on LinkedIn. You don't have to start posting 7 to 10 times a week. You just need to be visible. So start posting 3 times a week. And how are you going to help educate, inspire, challenge, or understand your audience? So social selling is something that we're seeing a lot more of, and that would be my tip.
Fantastic, Charlotte. Thank you so much for that tip. If you do want some more tips on social selling, we did do a webinar some months ago now that was very sort of informative and gave some ideas about getting started with social selling. So do go and check that out. Charlotte, thank you so much for joining us for this webinar.
Thanks for having me.
David, can we have your take? I'm sorry, Michael, you were going for it there, weren't you? But we'll get to you. Don't worry.
Mike, I'll promise to be really quick so we can get to you. Sorry. Yeah, all right. So not prepared for this one, but just thinking about it, I'm about to make a public prediction in front of you all. We spoke about Vidyard being kind of like, I felt 2018, 2019 was its peak. I think voice notes is kind of like peaking at the moment on LinkedIn. My prediction for next year, so to get on it early, because doing things early adopters always win, is not cryptocurrency. It is WhatsApping. It's WhatsApping, and it's Slack/Teams Connect. I don't know what it's called. We've started testing it and it's going pretty well, but we're WhatsApping people. People seem to be very, very receptive to it. Like, we'll make a call, drop them a WhatsApp afterwards, and as long as you have a professional looking picture and everything else, then generally we're not getting much negative feedback on it at all. But the second thing is this Slack Connect. You as long as you've got their email, instead of emailing them, you throw them a connect on Slack, and actually, even as a way of getting another touch point out there that's unique. It feels potentially a little bit more intrusive for some people, but again, like, the responses have been really positive. So yeah, get on that early. That would be my top tip.
Amazing.
Those are great.
Thank you, David, for joining us, and thank you for that prediction. So, Michael, we finally come to you. If I can limit you to one tip to take away, please.
No, first of all, but I will give you the base. So I'm gonna go to Charlotte and David. I'm gonna build on both of these. Charlotte, I can't agree more. Create content. David, I can't agree more. Be different. What I think is that the marketing funnel used to be awareness, engagement, conversion, value, but I truly believe that now it's awareness, engagement, value, and then once they've gotten value, that they then want to convert. So I will say for my business, I 15x'd my business year over year by posting on TikTok, and I've grown my LinkedIn following probably double in the last 2 months by just simply copying and pasting TikToks over to LinkedIn. So I can't agree more. 100% of my leads I get are all TikTok, and I don't do any outbound at this point. That said, my biggest tip specifically for Q4 is using this one phrase, which is too soon. When you're talking to somebody, we simply say, you'll talk to your boss. Great, let's meet next week. Instead, say, you're talking to your boss. Great, can we meet Thursday, or is that too soon? Can you bring us to your boss next week? No. Can we bring us to your boss Thursday, or is that too soon? Should we meet tomorrow morning, or is that too soon? They will always say it is too soon, but they'll give you a time that's almost immediately thereafter. Thursday's too soon, Friday morning. How about that? Those are my tips.
Fantastic. Michael, thank you so much for joining us for this webinar. Some smashing tips there. Tyler, see us home. One final tip from you.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about setting up a Q4 pipeline. I think, sum it all up for me of just like really be selfish with where you invest your time. So make sure that you're investing your time in the right places. We talked about, in terms of qualifying, make sure you're going after the qualified prospect, get that information early, ask the tough questions early in the process, because number two, I keep saying it, but segment down your buckets, right? So where am I investing my time? Is it net new? Is it, existing? And is it old, right? Figure out as many ways you possibly can to automate this stuff as well, right? So once you kind of reverse engineer it, automate that stuff so your time isn't getting sucked up. And then last but not least, like I do mean it, like if one of the hardest challenges is who should I be reaching out to? Who's in the market right now? Who's got budget? Who's, this, that, and the other, like get some sort of intent information. Like I would go with like a lead forensics clearly, but like that to me is probably the biggest game changes for my Q4. When I came here, in the B2B, typically Q4 is kind of slowest because you can't always get people to spend the money and et cetera. But like if I know who I'm supposed to be calling every day, that just makes my job so much easier. So that's how I always look at it. It's like my time is very valuable. I want to put it where it needs to go. So speak to the qualified prospects, segment down, what actual bucket, because maybe it's not net new. Maybe you can't turn over quick enough in Q4. So you do need to go in and actually fish from these other wells a bit more. And then, yeah, the last part is get something in place. Get something in place that says you should call this person right now. Watch for signals. You can follow them. They can make posts. You can get intent data. There's all kinds of different things, but figure it out. And that way you're only putting your time into people who are going to be receptive to that message. Because remember, you can create all the value you want, but so are all of your competitors. So is everybody else in your market. So like if they see value and they identify they have a problem, they're on your website, they're looking, they're doing their homework. And if you're not in the conversation at the right time, you're going to lose that deal. So you may have done all the branding, but somebody swoops in because they got a cheaper price listed on their website, you're in big trouble. So get something that tells you I should be calling this person.
Tyler, thank you so much. Thank you everybody for joining us for this webinar. It's been a fantastic chat, lots of value. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us for another Essential B2B webinar brought to you by Lead Forensics. And we'll see you for the next one. Thank you all so much.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Yeah, awesome job, everyone. Thanks.